You can understand what they're doing. I don't think I'm not in favor of piracy,
right.
Any other act of violence, but the source of the piracy is in the West. Actually, Europe more than the United States. First of all, the waters near Somalia were used for fishing. Well, they've been heavily polluted by mostly Europe, Saudi Arabia, the United States marginally, even toxic wastes. They've just destroyed the waters there. They can't fish. The state itself, it had a function, I mean, it has a long, complicated history, but just recently, there was a sort of functioning government, the Islamic courts, a couple of years ago. The U.S. ran through a Security Council resolution calling on all states not to interfere in Somalia, and it immediately violated it by supporting an Ethiopian invasion, which just tore the place to shreds. Now it's a collection of raging militias. So yeah, they have a lot of problems, and we have a big hand in it. And one of the consequences of that is piracy. So I don't like piracy, but if anybody's concerned about piracy, why not pay attention to our role in it? I'd like to take, just 2 nights ago in New York, I was at an event about the Mavi Marmara. That's international piracy, and the U.S. is all over it, and very serious, and it's been going on for 30 years. I mean, for 30 years, Israel's been hijacking ships in international waters, killing people, taking hostages, bringing them to Israel, putting them in their secret prison, all with the help of the United States. I mean, that's serious piracy.
A very clear example of how capitalism works and its effects and how it ravages is in the recent pirate stories we've heard from Somalia.
How's that?
Well, I don't know if people are aware, but for about 18 years, the country of Somalia in eastern Africa has been without a government because other nations of the world, including the United States, have fought against that country having a government so that the natural resources could be exploited. Very specifically, for those 18 years and perhaps longer, the United States and Western Europe have fished the coastal area of Somalia virtually to death. There are no fish left there for the Somalis or for anyone else for that matter. Secondly, for the majority of those 18 years, the United States and Western Europe have been dumping waste into that area as well, including some of our nuclear waste. That's ravaging. That's taking a beautiful part of God's creation that in some sense belongs to a people, that is part of a people's heritage, the people of Somalia, and saying, we don't care about you. We care about our own need to eat fish and our own need to get rid of our garbage. Here.
And so you think the pirating is a result of...
The pirating is a normal human result of that, yes, because that's the only way they can live and survive and remind the rest of the world that what we're doing to this tiny country, much like what we've done to other countries, is wrong. It's ravaging, it's destroying, it's spoiling a beautiful part of this creation that has a right to live otherwise.
Today, the American people heard the good news that the American ship captain who was being held hostage by the pirates in the Indian Ocean off the shores of Somalia was released. And this is very good that his life was spared. But it does raise some questions on exactly what's going on in that region. And if we're to solve this problem, we ought to try to understand exactly what is happening. This is not an isolated incident. Matter of fact, piracy has been going on for a good many years, more than a decade, and it mainly started over in Indonesia and Malaysia, but now it's moved over into the Indian Ocean and near the vital oil routes into the Persian Gulf. But we, as Americans, should know exactly our involvement in Somalia. Most people do, at least I hope most people do, remember the foolish attempt And Clinton went into Somalia in the early 1990s, and a fiasco resulted. We got involved in a civil war there and supported one faction, and several of our helicopters went down, and I think a dozen or so of our people were killed. But we left. But we didn't get uninvolved in the region. Under George Bush, we actually stayed involved in a very deliberate fashion by hiring out the Ethiopians to go in and act as our proxy army to go in and invade and try to set up a government friendly toward us. That hasn't been successful either. And there's civil strife there. There's a civil war going on, and this is ripe for those who want to radicalize the Islamic religion and take advantage of it, and they have. So there's civil strife over there. So this incident is hardly called blowback because they have been hitting a lot of ships around the world and other countries. This is probably the first American ship that was taken hostage by the pirates. But it is an unintended consequence of our policies over there. And I think it's important that we realize this. This could really expand the militarism of the region, and that is what I'm fearful of. Is it could end up spending a lot more money without really fully understanding how a problem like this should be taken care of. First off, it sort of reminds me of what the conditions were like before 9/11. Before 9/11, we knew about individuals taking over aircraft, and yet the federal government was in charge, and they said, don't have guns on the airplane and don't resist. And lo and behold, those who wanted to do harm to us took advantage of those circumstances, and they were able to carry out the attacks on 9/11. But similar circumstances exist now. The ships, especially those on the American flag, are told they can't carry guns. And even the owners of the vessels tell them don't resist because their cargo is too precious. But think about it. Think about a couple little motorboats running up to these large vessels with 4 or 5 pirates, and they can take over these vessels and then hold ships hostage. There's dozens and dozens of ships being held hostage right now. But I, quite frankly, think that the responsibility ought to fall on these liners. I don't think just because people go into these dangerous waters that our Army and Navy and Air Force and everything has to follow these individuals. Just think about the signs that we have seen at the airports on occasion. Such and such country is a dangerous place to go. Don't go. If you do go, go at your own risk. In a way, that should apply here. I think when these vessels and these large companies get involved in getting into these so-called war zones, they should assume some responsibility. But we shouldn't put prohibitions in their way. We shouldn't say that they can't carry guns, because quite frankly, I think the companies are capable of dealing with this. But it also raises the subject of the principle of the mark and reprisal. The mark and reprisal principle was used in our early years, lo and behold, for pirates. And that means that they're under international agreement and understanding and a letter coming from our U.S. Congress. Those ships do have the right under international law to defend themselves. I think if every potential pirate knew that this be the case, they would have second thoughts, because they could probably be blown out of the water rather easily if those were the conditions. But overall, I think it raises question about our foreign policy. And once again, I think foreign intervention leads to all kinds of problems. Right now, I believe this could lead to very excessive, more military spending. Already, we've seen our new president, President Obama, increasing the DoD budget for next year by 9%. He's also come up now with another request of $83 billion to fight the war in Iraq and in Afghanistan, so things are not slowing down. And now, with this one individual needing rescue and this problem having been around for a long time, my guess is, and my prediction is, that it's going to be used to call forth many, many more dollars to be spent in the military-industrial complex without once thinking about how our foreign policy should be revived.